Hey, what's good, my bad witches and Agathaughts? It's me, MT, and welcome back to the Heavy Spoiler Show, gang. This is about to be a breakdown for episode 4 of Agatha All Along, an episode that dives into the past of Alice Wu Gulliver and her entire family's generational curse. So let's just get into it. But quick disclaimer, I did write this video before certain elements of the season were spoiled online via, toy leaks and whatnot. So there is a certain part of this video where it seems like I'm talking about the toy leaks, but I'm not. It's literally just a complete coincidence. If you don't know what I'm talking about, stay far away from the spoilers, because it'll definitely spoil a huge part of the show. But if you do know what I'm talking about, I just want you to know that that's a complete coincidence, an accident, and I had no idea when I was writing it. Alright, that's all. Let's get into it. If I Can't Reach You, Let My Song Teach You is the title of the 4th episode of Agatha All Along, and it starts right where episode 3 left off, with the group dealing with the sudden and tragic death of Sharon. As Agatha inspects Sharon's lifeless body, she tells Sharon's corpse that she didn't know that she had it in her. When Teen asks Agatha to explain what she meant by that, Agatha merely winks at him, completely leaving it up to the audience to figure out what she meant for herself, which was a rude thing to do, Agatha. But it seems likely that Agatha was referring to Sharon's latent magic potential. Much like Teen brought up in the last episode, anyone with the desire to learn how to use magic can learn how to do so. And this is primarily because the magical cosmic energies of the Infinity Stones naturally live within every human being, courtesy of the Big Bang, much like I brought up in my previous Agatha All Along breakdowns. However, it seems like Agatha saw a strong potential for wielding magic inside of Sharon by analyzing her body after her death, subtly implying that Sharon could have possibly made a decent witch if she ever decided to trade her gardening tools for a Nimbus 2000. After this, Alice takes the opportunity to pay her respects to Sharon by kneeling over her body, and when she does this, we get a good look at the back of Alice's jacket, which has the design of a giant red flame under a big ol' red moon, with the word burn written inside of said flame, foreshadowing the events to come in this red area of the Witch's Road, purposely designed after Alice's connection with her mother. And this isn't the first time that we've seen a blood moon in a magical Marvel Studios production, as one was featured in Multiverse of Madness when Doctor Strange and Christine arrived in Sinister Strange's universe. You can see it in the background of Sinister Strange's house when Doctor Strange gets to the base of his stairs. Then we learn that Alice's mother Lorna didn't actually die on the Witch's Road, but instead on a tour in a hotel fire, which would then fuel Alice's fear of approaching the house at the very end of the Red Road later on in the episode. The witches then start bickering about who's to blame for Sharon's death before Teen cuts them all off and chastises the group as a whole for not acting like a team, before saying, "I wish we could go home." Yet another of the show's allusions towards the Wizard of Oz, as wishing to go home was Dorothy's main desire while traveling down the yellow brick road. And not long after this, Teen makes the claim that people can't just be replaced, to which Agatha says, "Can't they?" Which is hilarious considering that Agatha was the one who replaced her own damn son for the Darkhold. But all too eager to replace Sharon immediately, Agatha has the group attempt to summon a backup witch to the Witch's Road, which causes the group to accidentally summon Rio Vidal herself, who seems to climb out of Sharon's grave and joke that she was in the neighborhood. But I don't actually think that Rio was joking at all, to be honest, because I think Rio Vidal might have actually legitimately been in the neighborhood, courtesy of Sharon Davis herself. And the reason I believe this lies in a moment later on in the episode when Agatha goads Rio into revealing what she actually wants. Play that clip, editor. Play it now, please.
I get the pleasure of watching you do what you do best. Kill all the witches around you. Then what? You get your power, and I get my buddies.
You get your power, and I get my bodies. It looks like Rio is purposely allowing Agatha and her coven to live and go on this journey because she knows that any witch that hangs around Agatha Harkness long enough is highly likely to die because of her. And the very anticipation of all that carnage is entertaining to Rio, and even gets her all hot and excited. Rio's excitement to collect the bodies of Agatha's coven over the course of the series definitely pushes me to believe that Rio Vidal could actually be playing the cosmic entity Death herself, because that's kinda how Death rolls in the Marvel comics, especially when Death had her extremely toxic relationship with Thanos, the Mad Titan. Because back when Thanos first got acquainted with Death all those years ago, Thanos was basically Death's biggest simp, man, senselessly slaughtering as many living beings across the cosmos as he could just to please her. And in a similar vein, it seems that because Agatha spent centuries of her life ending the lives of witch after witch after witch, Death probably began to fall in love with Agatha for her being Death's greatest soldier on Earth. However, it does seem like something must have changed between both Agatha and Rio after the mysterious death or disappearance of Agatha's son, Nicholas Scratch. And if Rio is in fact the cosmic entity Death, there could be the possibility that Agatha resents Rio for taking her son from her, which could be why Agatha gets super stern with Rio when she feels like Rio is threatening Teen's life. Like during the moment when Agatha says no to Rio when the both of them are looking at Teen through a mirror's reflection, and later on in the episode when Agatha says don't as Teen is on the verge of dying from blood loss. This could be Agatha's way of straight up telling Death to stay away from Teen specifically, likely because Agatha believes Teen to possibly be her long-lost son, Nicholas Scratch, coming back to her somehow. However, we of course learn at the very end of this episode from Rio herself that this isn't the case apparently, which is super interesting. Rio being Death would also explain why we briefly saw what appeared to be the true skeleton form of Death during Lilia's vision in episode 3, and also, naturally, why Rio seemingly popped out of Sharon's grave. Because if Rio is Death, then Sharon's death caused Rio to be in the neighborhood after all. Also, Rio being Death could also serve to explain why her name is Rio Vidal in this series, because like I mentioned in my previous breakdowns, Rio Vidal's name in Spanish translates to River of Life or Life River, which to me sounds like could be an allusion towards the river Styx from Greek mythology, the mythical river that all souls were believed to have to cross when headed to Hades' realm of the dead. I mean, the river Styx is often depicted in art to be filled with the souls of those who have once fallen in. And of course, one of the most famous and earliest examples of the river Styx that I came across in my childhood was Hades' River of Souls in the Disney Hercules movie. And not only this, but the name of the ferryman that ferries souls across the river Styx in Greek mythology is actually named Charon. But Charon is actually spelled Charon, which is basically just Sharon with a C. So that could also be why Rio symbolically emerged from Sharon's grave. And also, finally, Rio's use of green magic and her calling herself the Green Witch feels oddly similar to the MCU's other death representative, the Asgardian goddess of death, Hela, who once used a special type of green magic made from the eternal flame to reanimate the nervous systems of all those dead Asgardians to make her army of the dead. So I would not be surprised if Rio could use her own green magic to reanimate corpses in a similar way. But this is all hypothesizing, of course. Death has never really had a relationship with Agatha Harkness in the comics, so this possibility is kind of out there, but definitely still plausible in my opinion. But then again, so is Rio potentially being Mephisto's daughter Blackheart, like I brought up in a previous breakdown, so I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. All that we really know for now is that Rio is a spooky, scary bitch. But anyways, after Rio's creepy-ass arrival that seems to sexually confuse both Jennifer and Alice, the group then walk their asses to the house of the second trial, very much themed after fire to match the theme of the overall trial, as well as this second red area of the road. And the group immediately see this as soon as they arrive at the front door, as the waxing moon design on this door apparently is indicative of the moon's fire phase. And since Alice herself is a witch that always wears red and appears to have red chaos energy powers that she inherited from her mother who died in a fire, this trial was definitely themed with Alice in mind as a detailed representation of her fear of her generational curse. A generational curse that Alice's mother Lorna tried to protect her from by performing a special version of the Ballad of the Witch's Road on tour, essentially attempting to channel the natural cosmic infinity energies that live inside of all of her fans to attempt to summon the Witch's Road and kill that damn generational curse once and for all by her damn self. But unfortunately, all of Lorna's attempts failed. But anyways, as soon as all the witches enter the house, their clothes are immediately changed yet again to match the fashion of the 1970s this time, the same era that Lorna Wu did all of her touring in. And this being the case, I gotta say, man, Sharon Davis choosing to die right before we get sent back to the 1970s is insanely rude and disrespectful, because it would have been super fun to see Deborah Jo Rupp back in her Kitty Foreman getup from that 70s show. And as the group examine their surroundings, Lilia stares at a wall of art depicting witches being tortured for their witchcraft, with one being boiled alive, one being burned at the stake, one chained up in prison, and another tied up in the middle of a forest, much like Agatha was in Salem. Faint sounds of witches screaming can be heard in the background during this moment, which could either just be Lilia remembering past witch friends who died in such cruel manners, or could possibly be Lilia's powers tapping into the final moments of each of these women via some type of magical psychometry. You know, much like how Jedi like Ahsoka and Cal Kestis use Force psychometry in Star Wars to discover what happened in the past just by being near a particular inanimate object. Meanwhile, Jennifer Kale is over here looking at a variety of Japanese Oni masks, with these masks, of course, being designed after demons or Oni if you're Japanese. It was thought that because these masks were designed after scary demons, that wearing one or having one around your house could repel evil spirits away, which is fitting considering how much Lorna herself wanted to keep the evil spirit behind her generational curse away from her family. As Jennifer stares at this hairy Oni mask, she gets creeped out as a pair of real eyeballs appears briefly behind this mask for a few seconds before disappearing completely, with those eyes possibly belonging to the evil curse spirit itself as it stalks its prey from behind the walls. Then we're brought to this wall in the house consisting of 2 articles from a fictional drop beat magazine highlighting various artists, and near those articles is one advertisement for a fictional band called Pinhole that apparently performed at the fictional Black Cat Music Hall in New Orleans, with black cats and New Orleans being tightly associated with the concept of witchcraft in general. And next to all those is a flyer for the very real band Fleetwood Mac, specifically when Fleetwood Mac performed at the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum in Oakland, California on May 7th, 1977, a concert where they would perform their hit song The Chain, a personal favorite of Star-Lord's mother Meredith Quill, as she would include it in Star-Lord's Awesome Mix Volume 2. The inclusion of Fleetwood Mac on this wall could be this show's way of insinuating that Fleetwood Mac were just as secretly magical as Lorna Wu was, possibly even doing what Lorna did and using their concerts to transform their audience into one big coven, reciting protection spells on the low. And if this is somehow the case, it's kind of crazy to think how Meredith Quill could have attended one of these types of magical concerts herself. But anyways, soon after this, as both Alice and Lilia are talking about Lorna's magical concerts, Lilia seems to have another senior moment by suddenly blurting out, "Which one is it? Am I wispy or am I kooky?" This is before Lilia would then look back at Alice like she's seeing Alice for the first time in a long time, prompting her to begin to tell Alice to don't do something, before she immediately regains her lucidity. And as confusing as that moment was, this combination of random exclamations from Lilia has got me wondering whether or not Lilia's mind tends to randomly and suddenly jump through different points in Lilia's own timeline, causing Lilia to blurt random things that were actually supposed to be said in the past or the future. So Lilia asking if she's wispy or kooky could theoretically be something she should have said in the past or the future. But because her mind decided to make a quantum leap to a random moment in her own timeline, sometimes her words suddenly come out too early or too late. And this would kind of serve to explain why Lilia seems surprised and happy to see Alice for a brief few seconds. Because maybe a future consciousness of Lilia has not seen Alice in a while because of something tragic that could have happened to Alice at some point in the future of their adventure, causing Lilia to try to warn her to don't do a particular thing. Not sure though, but I definitely feel like the possibility for that is strong there. And there actually might be a little bit of MCU precedence for this type of thing. Because remember in Ant-Man and the Wasp when Scott Lang briefly had his mind taken over by Michelle Pfeiffer when she was stuck in the quantum realm? Janet Van Dyne was able to do this via a little something called quantum entanglement, which is a phenomenon that Albert Einstein guy from Oppenheimer once called spooky action at a distance. Quantum entanglement is when 2 subatomic particles are tightly linked together so that the action of one of those particles motivates the action of another particle, no matter how freaking far those 2 particles are from one another. These 2 particles could be light years apart and even separated by time itself, and yet these 2 particles would be able to communicate with one another, a phenomenon that Marvel expertly demonstrated with science fiction with the Janet Van Dyne possession scene in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this idea of quantum entanglement up when it comes to Lilia's scattery brain is because both Lilia and Ant-Man 2's Janet Van Dyne appear to have one major thing in common. They both appear to be perfect examples of quantum energy manipulating beings in the MCU. While Agatha was getting Lilia riled up at the end of episode 2, we can see sparks of yellow energy travel along Lilia's fingers. That's quantum energy, baby, because much like I brought up in my Guardians of the Galaxy breakdown when I broke down the real-life science energies of the Infinity Stones, which you can watch here if you want, yellow quantum energy in the MCU is not only the very same type of energy found within the Mind Stone, but this yellow energy represents the core aspect of reality that has to do with quantum reactions, with the word quantum basically just being a fancy word for teensy tiny reactions on a subatomic level, with electricity being the most popular of these subatomic reactions that we deal with every day, because electricity is basically just subatomic electrons on a quantum level doing their thing and whatnot. And because the human mind is just the product of bioelectricity running up and down our own nervous systems, quantum energy can also be called mind energy, and it's why the Mind Stone is called what it is. And it's also why the Ancient One says in Doctor Strange 1 that the root of existence is where mind and matter meet, with the root of existence being things at the quantum level. And this is the reason why Electro is purposely yellow in the MCU as opposed to blue like he was in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, because Electro's powers are the results of quantum reactions, unlike Io the Living Planet and Thor's godly blue dark energy lightning. Thor's lightning is not the result of quantum reactions, which is why his lightning doesn't glow yellow like Zeus's or Electro's, because Thor is the god of thunder and not lightning. His lightning is just dark energy. Blah blah blah. The point is, if Lilia has powers rooted in quantum energy, then quantum entanglement could theoretically be part of her power set. This, combined with Lilia's failing brain at her old age, could accidentally allow her mind to become quantumly entangled with her own past selves throughout time, accidentally allowing her to quantumly connect and talk through her younger and older selves without the host body remembering what the hell was even said or done, much like what happened with Scott Lang after Janet Van Dyne disconnected from his body. It's essentially the same type of shit Wolverine did when they sent his mind back in time in X-Men Days of Future Past. This is just spooky action at a distance, quantum entanglement. But that's just my personal attempted explanation for Lilia's kookiness. Who knows what the hell is up with that chick? But anyways, after this, we get that moment in the studio booth where Agatha tricks Rio into revealing to the group that she secretly wants them all dead so that she can collect their bodies, causing the group to get super upset for 2 seconds until, whoops, a local teenager accidentally unleashes a generational curse on the group after playing the Devil's Disco Disc. Just kidding, it's apparently just an old Ballad of the Witch's Road record from Lorna Wu and the Coral Shore, with the record including tracks like Mary Mary, The Red-Haired Woman, Cinnamon and Sage, The Flick of the Wrist, and Swan's Song. And the backwards song playing during this moment is of course just Lorna Wu's Ballad of the Witch's Road that the gang would later play together forwards to annihilate the curse once and for all. Having a curse be played through a reverse track of musical audio is actually incredibly fitting considering that we're dealing with a heavy 70s era rock theme with this second challenge, as many religious groups in the 70s assumed that bands like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles were hiding curses and other types of demonic messages in their albums by singing those curses backwards, which is absolutely nuts. But do you know who was also absolutely nuts? The notorious cult leader and murder maestro Charles Manson, a man who apparently has been cited to have taken great inspiration from the apparent hidden backwards messages, quote unquote, that he heard in the music of the Beatles. Huge shout outs to Paul for bringing this to my attention because I straight up had no idea about any of that shit. That's why Paul's the GOAT. Then said curse starts to set both Lilia and Jennifer ablaze, leading Alice the Protection Witch to swing into action. But not long after this, Teen is suddenly launched into the air and thrown through the glass of the studio booth, causing one of the shards of glass to fatally pierce his torso. However, although everyone just assumed that it was just this demon-esque curse that was responsible for Teen's injury, I have super strong doubts against this, mostly because tossing people around with gusts of wind isn't how this particular curse operates. All this curse tends to do is light witches on fire, just like it did with Lilia, Jennifer, Alice, and of course Alice's mother. So for this harpy-looking curse to suddenly switch up their whole technique just for Teen seems highly unlikely. Personally, I believe it was Rio Vidal herself who yeeted that teenager into the glass, mostly because she was bored, impatient, and really wanted someone to die immediately. And we literally saw Rio Vidal blow down Agatha's front door with a similar type of windy magic towards the end of the first episode. But most of all, I believe Rio was deeply curious as to how Agatha herself would react to Teen being fatally injured, just to gauge how much Agatha truly cares for the boy. And this action could have also possibly been motivated by a little bit of jealousy, because it seems like Rio wishes Agatha felt any kind of genuine love for her again. But anyways, after this group sings the Harpy to oblivion, Teen collapses from his wounds, causing Agatha to freak the hell out and frantically ask Jennifer what she needs to heal him. A stark contrast to Agatha at the beginning of the episode, when she was extremely uncaring towards the death of Sharon Davis, not even caring to learn her actual name even after Sharon died. And it's a contrast that Rio apparently notices immediately, which would seem to inform Rio that Agatha must be assuming that this kid is her long-lost son, Nicholas Scratch. An assumption that Rio would shatter for Agatha at the very end of the episode by telling her that Teen is in fact not her kid at all. But before that moment happens, of course, Agatha checks in on Teen to make sure that he's okay, but would quickly grow angry at him when he asks her what happened to her son, prompting her to rejoin the other women camping out on the road. And while the ladies bond and exchange stories, Lilia reveals that she was once bit by a vampire at one point in her life. Yet another reference to vampires existing in the MCU after Blade's appearance at the very end of the Eternals film and the vampire Saracen's appearance in She-Hulk. And in response to this, Agatha reveals that she once took a knitting needle to the elbow courtesy of a group called the Daughters of Liberty, a reference to a secret group of female freedom fighters that was founded around the 18th century, around the very beginnings of the United States of America. And over the next few centuries, the Daughters of Liberty would continue their freedom fighting in secret and recruiting the best female heroes of their times, including the modern day Marvel heroes Sharon Carter, Mockingbird, Echo, Spider-Woman, Misty Knight, and Black Widow. Comic book Agatha Harkness was actually a part of this group herself at one point and instructed the Daughters of Liberty in the art of magic, but it seems like MCU Agatha completely wiped this group out a long time ago when they dared to hurt her. But right after Agatha says all this, Rio reveals that she also has a scar of her own, but her scar came in the form of a human woman that she once loved in the past, but had to hurt because it was her job to do so, with that woman obviously referring to Agatha Harkness. And while we may not know exactly what Rio is talking about here, I have a feeling that this horrible thing Rio was forced to do to Agatha had to do with Agatha's son, Nicholas Scratch, and how it could have been Rio's job to remove Nicholas from Agatha's life forever, which is another reason why I believe Rio Vidal to be the cosmic entity Death herself. If I had to guess, it seems like Nicholas Scratch may have actually straight up died in the past, possibly through a radical and rash decision that the power-hungry Agatha made in exchange for the Darkhold. But regardless of how Nicholas Scratch died, it's his death itself that could be motivating Agatha's hatred for Rio, because in Agatha's eyes, Rio is selfishly keeping Nicholas from her, and that could have caused this permanent rift in their relationship forever. But like I always say, only time will tell there. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this breakdown of episode 4 of Agatha All Along. Let us know what you guys thought of this episode down in the comment section below this video. And like always, you can follow me at Mastertainment on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, wherever I am on the internet. But most importantly, hit subscribe here on Heavy Spoilers and hit that notification bell to get notifications for every time we upload a video. And also do not forget to hit up the Heavy Spoilers store so that you can have some pretty damn sweet Heavy Spoilers merch on your body. But yes, you guys are amazing for watching this video. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.